They used to say there was a dog who took himself to school, not with a leash, not beside a child or behind a teacher. Alone every morning, just before the bell rang, he'd trot up to the schoolyard fence, sit himself down, tuck his big golden tail around his paws and wait. In our town, stories ran like creek water, swirling, wandering, picking up bits and pieces from anyone who had half a minute to talk. But most stories, they pitted out and dried up before anyone cared to follow where they came from. This one, it stayed, and for good reason. It wasn't just that the dog came to school by himself. It was something in the way he did it, like he had a purpose. Now, whether you believe that or not, I'll leave that to you. But I knew the truth the moment I saw them, the boy and the dog, and the secret in the space between them. Back then, our town was just a speck pressed between two pine-covered hills in southern Oregon, a quiet place where every house had a front porch. Mail still came on foot, and the grocery clerk would ask if your grandma was feeling better before ringing up your apples, where strangers waved before they knew your name, where the same crow landed on the post office roof every morning, just after sunrise, and where once, for a few strange and unforgettable seasons, a golden retriever named Charlie became a part of the school day, just like pencils and lunchboxes and spelling tests. Charlie, he wasn't the kind of dog you forgot. There was something about him warm, like flannel fresh from the dryer, eyes the color of cinnamon, always watching from under those gentle brows like he was listening for something only he could hear. He wasn't wild.did and single quotes to chase or chickens. He was just present, like a breath, like a promise. I first heard about him from my niece, who came home clutching a drawing she made in art class. Crayon on construction paper, big yellow scribbles in the shape of a dog sitting by the jungle gym. "That's Charlie," she declared. "He walks himself to school." I laughed, but then my neighbor mentioned him too. And the elderly postmaster, even the barista in town, said she'd seen him sitting near the bike rack, watching the kids line up before the first bell. Back then, no one thought it odd that Ethan was quiet. New kid, after all. Smart, small, with a storm of chestnut curls always falling over his eyes. His family had only just moved into that blue house on Wren Street. Nice folks, kind, but Ethan, he held a sort of hush about him, spoke more with his eyes than his voice, kept close to his mother's side at school drop-off, sometimes holding her coat sleeve like he wasn't quite ready to let go. The teachers tried, of course. They smiled, asked questions, invited him during games, the kind of gentle prodding that educators become so good at when they sense a child whose roots haven't quite taken to the soil yet. But Ethan kept one foot inside himself, until Charlie don't know. The dog didn't appear. With ceremony, no fireworks, no barking. He was just there, first spotted one cloudy Thursday in October, settled politely beyond the fence near the row of lilac bushes, watching recess unfold like it was his favorite program at first. Nobody connected him to anyone. Stray, perhaps, though to clean. Wanderer, maybe. But something about the way he sat, steady, ears perked, but not anxious, made people pause. Friendly fella, someone murmured. But he wasn't after attention. He just watched, and when the bell chimed and children poured back inside, he remained a few minutes longer before walking off the way he came, leaving no more trace than a sunbeam across the grass. He came again the next day, and the next dot, always at the same time, always the same gentle gaze. Near the corner of the playground fence, it didn't take long before someone noticed the way Ethan peeked toward that lilac hedge during lunch, or the way his shoulders settled the moment he caught a glimpse of gold on the other side. The first real smile he gave since starting school wasn't to a teacher or to a classmate. It was whispered quietly at the fence line just before walking back in. "Hi, Charlie." Now, nobody knew yet how he got there, how a dog absent leash, collar, escort was finding his way to school and then home again. It was a mystery, one that rippled through the halls and across picnic tables, one that warmed hands around mugs, at parent meetings, and filled minutes between unfolding lunchbox lids. But maybe some stories begin that way, not with answers, but with questions and a golden glint in the bushes beside a schoolyard fence. It started on a rainy Monday in March, the kind that smelled like wet bark and the mossy hush of a town that had been soaked one too many springs. Ethan had just turned 8 the day before, and his parents, who had moved to Wren Street less than 2 months earlier, were hoping a birthday with a bow on top might help ease the ache they saw press behind his silence. They drove out to the only animal shelter in 30 miles, where the chain-link pens rattled and barked like 100 small storms. It wasn't fancy. Concrete floors, faded clipboards, and a desk clerk who wore her cardigan like armor. But Ethan barely noticed any of that. His eyes were peeled, scanning faces behind the fencing, searching, as if he'd know what to do the moment he saw the right one. "Take your time, sweetie," his mum said, placing a warm hand on his shoulder. They walked slowly past the runs. A spotted terrier yipped frantically, 2 hounds coiled around each other in sleep. A lean black lab mix nosed at a chew toy. But Ethan kept going, quiet, windswept, and then, in the far left corner of the shelter, beneath a skein of drooping cedar branches that ticked lightly against the roof, there sat a golden retriever, older than a pup, younger than old, luminous. And still, he watched them with those soft, cinnamon eyes, tail giving a slow, single sweep. Ethan stopped, the kind of stop that fills the space like it matters, like he'd remembered something he hadn't known to forget. "That one," he whispered. The dog stood, not urgently, just with a sure, fluid step forward. He placed one paw near the gate, leaned in slightly. Ethan crouched. Their eyes met. No trembling, no barking. Just something passed between them, quiet as fog, familiar as breath. The clerk ambled over with a scratched clipboard. "Charlie," she said, pointing to the tag on the kennel. "Came in about a week ago. No chip, no tags. No one came forward. Sweet boy, let me open this up." When she slid the latch, Charlie padded slowly toward. Ethan sat down before him and gently, as if he'd done it 100 times, pressed his head beneath the boy's hand. Time fell still for a moment. The kind of moment that tender folks think of as sacred, but never say aloud. "He picked me," Ethan breathed. Or maybe it was the other way around. By the time paperwork was signed and photos taken, Ethan rode home with a leash coiled loose around his wrist and Charlie's head in his lap. Rain tapped against the windows, but inside the car it felt warm, like the first time someone says your name and means it. That night, Ethan read to Charlie from his favorite Booker, weather-softened copy of Charlotte's Web. He read until the words slowed and the room grew dim, and still Charlie didn't budge. Just placed his chin on Ethan's foot as if to say, "I'm here now." And from then on, he always was. Days ticked forward like pages, mornings filled with cereal spoons, and mismatched socks, walks to the mailbox, and leaves caught on the wind. Charlie fit into the rhythm of the house like he'd always known it. He learned where the squeaky step was, which couch cushion to avoid, that Ethan liked his grilled cheese without crust. They played in the yard under the big elm tree, took afternoon naps on the braided rug, and when things got too loud or too quiet or too new, Charlie would simply nudge Ethan's elbow and rest beside him soft as a shadow. But the one thing even Charlie couldn't make vanish was the unease that crept in every morning. Like clouds before a spring storm. School, Ethan had made no friends. Yet, not really. Just a few kids who knew his name and waved sometimes. He wasn't bullied, just overlooked. A whisper in a hallway full of chatter. He gripped his lunchbox too tight and spoke too softly when called upon. As the days pressed forward, so did the knot in his stomach. His parents could see it. His mum lingered longer at breakfast, touched his hair a fraction slower. His dad left sticky notes in his notebooks that said things like, "You've got this," and "I believe in the quiet types." Still, Ethan shrunk from the stairs each morning like they were taller than yesterday. Charlie saw it too. On one of those uneasy mornings, the sky still grey with sleep, Ethan tied his shoes at the door while Charlie sat nearby, ears tilted slightly, forward, watching. Ethan's mum offered a walk to school, something they did when the morning felt heavy. Charlie joined them, tail wagging, trotting a half step behind. Wren Street glistened with dew, and the sidewalk puddles reflected upside-down trees. Charlie's leash was short, but he stopped every so often to sniff the earth, tilting his head, like he was trying to read it. When they reached the schoolyard, Ethan hesitated. Kids buzzed across the blacktop like bees in a hive. Laughter too loud, footsteps too quick. His feet wanted to turn back. Charlie pressed his nose into Ethan's hand, and for a second Ethan smiled. "I wish," Ethan whispered, leaning in close. "I wish you could come with me." Charlie blinked slowly, nuzzled the boy's wrist. Ethan bent and hugged his neck hard, cheek buried in gold fur that smelled faintly of sun and old leaves. His mother called gently from the gate. With a sigh, Ethan pulled back, eyes flickering toward the noisy classrooms just beyond. Charlie stayed, still as they walked away, only turning back once the bell echoed and the yard cleared. Then he followed his leash back home, steady-footed and watchful. But that wish, soft and barely spoken, had landed. Charlie had heard it, felt it, and the next day, the one after that, and beyond, he would answer it the way only a dog truly can. It happened quietly, in the way that most unexpected miracles do. That first morning, no one saw Charlie leave. No dramatic door scratching, no barking, just gone, like he'd stepped into the sunrise with a mission folded neat and small in his heart. The gate latch had been nudged open by a shifting brisette hadn't clicked fully shut the afternoon before. The kind of chance mistake that rarely matters. But that Tuesday, it did. The lane's neighborhood sloped gently down toward the school. A trail of cracked sidewalks and overgrown fences. Charlie trotted like he had walked it every day in his dreams. Nose lifted, tail level, paws light against the wet pavement. No hesitation, no wasted steps. He passed the bakery with the pink-painted door and paused only once beneath the mural of the town's founder, a man with a beard big enough to store. Winter in someone, somewhere, might have seen him then, golden against the soft morning fog. But if they did, they said nothing. By the time the bell rang for second recess, Charlie had found his place again, not inside the schoolyard, but near it, just outside the southern fence, beside the hedge of lilacs that still hadn't bloomed but held the scent of promise. He lowered himself to the grass, legs stretched out, head up, ears perked, watching children burst onto the playground, chasing balls and voices that echoed like birds. Charlie didn't flinch. His eyes moved slowly between them all, scanning, waiting when he saw Ethan half hidden behind a jungle gym. Unsure where to belong, his tail thumped once. It wasn't loud or showy, just enough. Ethan looked up, and for the briefest flicker of a moment, the boy smiled. It was Miss Carter, the second-grade teacher, who first recognized Charlie. "That's the Lane's dog," she told the principal, peering through the window in the staff lounge. "From Wren Street, Suite 1. They brought him to family night. They called Ethan's family, told them he was safe, quiet, not bothering the kids, just lying peacefully across from the playground." Mrs. Lane laughed, bewildered. "He's never left the yard on his own before," she said. "We didn't know he was gone." When school wrapped, Mr. Lane came to pick Charlie up, found him right where the teachers had said still, sitting straight and patient, gaze aimed squarely at the doors from which the students streamed. "Come on, bud," Mr. Lane coaxed, clipping on a leash. "You've got folks wondering if we accidentally enrolled you." Charlie stood slowly, no fuss, just fell into step, tail gently trailing like a kite string behind him. That evening, at dinner, Ethan asked softly, "Was Charlie at school today?" His parents exchanged glances. His mother hesitated. "Well," she said, "he might have stopped by. He must have missed you." Ethan grinned. Not big, not loud, just that kind of quiet joy that unfolds secretly on the inside. He tucked an extra bite of his chicken into a napkin under the table. Charlie accepted it politely, head resting on the boy's knee. The next morning, the fence latch was shut tight. Still, Charlie left. Whether he poured it open, waited patiently for a passerby, or charted a path no human would think to look for, no one truly knows. But by the time the morning classes were underway, he was there again. Same spot, same posture, same timing. A few kids pointed him out. "It's the reading dog," one shouted. Ethan flushed pink, but he didn't look away. By the third day, teachers started nodding at him like he belonged. "He's a watchdog for feelings," Mr. Enders joked, sipping his coffee from a thermos shaped like a football. "Emotional support, recess," someone else chuckled, but the knowing glances weren't unkind. Charlie made no mess, asked for nothing, didn't cross the fence line. He didn't want to play, just to be there. And as the days trickled into weeks, his patterns held steady. He came only during the later recess, left before dismissal, appeared quietly, left quietly, vanished once the bell finished ringing, and always he waited with his chin resting on crossed paws, eyes trained on the laughter he held watch. Over, the janitor, Mr. Sal, began leaving a small bowl of water near the fence. Never mentioned it, just began doing it. And a small patch of the hedge became matted from where Charlie always lay. One Thursday, it rained. Hard, most kids stayed. Inside, teachers shuffled students through indoor activities, parachutes and puzzles and rainy day journals. Still, Charlie came, soaked and unshivering. He took his place like usual. Damp fur pressed into the muddy patch, watching, waiting. Mrs. Stone, the secretary, peeked through the blinds and whispered something to the nurse. Ethan had been having a hard morning. The din of wet weather complaints had pushed the room into fractious noise. But when he saw Charlie there, waiting through the grey, The storm inside him calmed each day. It became clearer. Charlie's visits weren't random. He wasn't wandering. He was following something pulse-true and quiet as instinct. Ethan's teachers began to notice 2 days when he spoke up more, participated just slightly better, smiled a fraction bigger. They aligned with the mornings Charlie showed up early or stayed longer. Like the dog could sense when to be there before even Ethan knew he needed him. A story began to form, not just about a dog who walked himself to school, but about how he seemed to know the schedule, how he always appeared a few minutes before recess, and left in time to miss the bustle of home time. "How does he know when to come?" whispered one kindergartner. "Maybe he reads clocks," said another. "No," a third replied solemnly. "He reads hearts." And silence followed, because some truths don't need proof, only belief. For Ethan, the world began to shift, gently, like snow melting under morning sun. He still wasn't the loudest child, not the fastest runner or most willing volunteer, but he'd begun waving first, sitting closer during story time, laughing, sometimes, with the corners of his eyes, and, when the bell rang, he'd glance just once toward the fence, toward Charlie, and every single time, Charlie would already be watching. The wind blew gently that morning, tipping the tops of the lilac bushes like someone flipping through a book of memories. Charlie was already there, curled against the crease in the fence line where the earth had given way to his weight, soft and worn now from daily visits. By then, his presence had slipped past curiosity and into expectation. Just as surely as the breakfast bell chimed and the announcements crackled over the loudspeaker, Charlie would be there. Every day, at first, there were murmurs, children pointing, whispering, tugging sleeves. "There he is, Charlie." They didn't dare cross the fence, and Charlie never tested it. He stayed in his patch of earth like a good listener does, still, open, attentive. And over time, what had been a novelty became a kind of ritual, not special because it was forced, but because it came gently, like morning light slipping softly beneath a curtain. One day, a third grader leaned his lunchbox over the gate and tipped out a crust of bread. Charlie didn't lunge, just stood slowly, padded over, and sniffed the offering like it was a rare delicacy. Tail thumping once. After that, others followed. Little bits from lunchboxes wrapped in napkins, her feet, sandwiches, licked clean yogurt lids, a slice of ham someone had bartered for earlier that day, and always discreetly an exchange of secrets between small hands and a golden silhouette. Mr. Sal, the janitor, started keeping a Tupperware of carrot sticks under his tool bench. "They're good for the coat," he'd say to no one in particular, leaving one next to the water dish by the hedge. Charlie ate them all, slowly and thoughtfully, like he understood every bite came with affection carved into it. The staff spoke in quiet tones when they mentioned him, but not with annoyance, more with the reverence of a church pew warmed by morning sun. Some kids left drawings pinned to the fence with clothespins, crayon tributes of gold-painted heroes with wagging tails. Others planted themselves deliberately near Charlie's patch for a chance to read aloud where he might hear. It didn't matter that he didn't speak. They just wanted to be near the kind of listening he offered. The rule was unspoken but well understood. Don't feed the dog. Don't touch the dog through the fence. Don't distract him if he wasn't looking your way. All of which, of course, were broken lovingly and often in tiny, harmless ways. Teachers stopped asking where Ethan went at lunch. They already knew. He'd sit on the far bench, beneath the netless basketball hoop, sandwich untouched in his lap. And when he saw the lilt of golden fur just beyond the lilacs, his shoulders would settle. Not in a dramatic way, just enough to know he could breathe again. On harder days, Charlie would arrive earlier, always seemed to. No one could explain it. On one such day, when Ethan had been left out of kickball by accident or on purpose, no one could quite tell. Charlie was already waiting before recess started, sitting up, ears forward, like he'd known something was coming. Ethan saw him and crossed the playground with slow steps, the air thick with names he wasn't part of. Halfway there, he stopped. He didn't cry, didn't wave. He just stood, hands folded. Small dot. Charlie leaned forward. Just enough. Tail brushing once against the fence post. And Ethan nodded, as if some wordless conversation between them had been resolved. After that, more children began to sit near the south fence. Not too close, just enough to be alongside the feeling of something gentle. There were science classes watched through the chain links. Story time with open windows nearby so he could hear. Some students chose new fence-facing seats when classrooms rearranged. There were more smiles, a little more laughter, small but steady dot. No stage lights, no announcements, just a community realigning itself around someone who didn't ask for anything. One afternoon, during library time, a second-grade girl whispered, "Do you think he comes just for Ethan?" And another said, "Maybe he comes for more than one of us now." By the end of the month, Charlie was as much a part of the day as the Pledge of Allegiance and pencil sharpeners. He didn't chase, didn't bark. He never ran along the fence, never whined or begged. He was simply there, quiet, constant, tail shifting back and forth to the rhythm of the breeze. One chilly morning, with frost still feathering the edges of the grass, a substitute teacher stopped short on her way in. "Is that dog? A dog?" The secretary smiled. "Yes, that's Charlie. Is he with someone?" "Just about everyone," she replied, setting down her coffee. It was never official, no badges, no announcements, no school board meetings. But when something true lives long enough in the bones of a place, it doesn't need to be written down. Charlie belonged, and more importantly, he chose to. It started with a whisper. A Tuesday afternoon, sun tilting low over the schoolyard, warm and quiet after a rain. Ethan was sitting in the back of the library, knees pulled close, a well-loved book resting on his lap. Around him, other children turned pages or scribbled on worksheets. But his voice had risen soft, sure, steady. One of the counselors passed by the door then, slowing mid-stride. Mrs. Brenner, she had a pencil behind her ear, and laugh lines tucked neatly around her eyes. She paused, watching as Ethan's fingers moved along the page, lips shaping each word like it mattered, and there, by the window, beneath the thick frame that cracked open just enough to let in the breeze, Charlie, stretched out in the usual place, paws splayed wide and head up, as if the cadence of Ethan's reading had stitched him to the moment. Mrs. Brenner watched them, boy and dog, bound by something old as trust, and something sparked later that week. While walking with the principal, she spoke. "You know," she said, nodding toward the playground, "I think Charlie could make a difference inside the classroom too." The official channel was surprisingly quick. Forms filled, heads nodded. The district had allowed reading dog programs. Before, they made children feel safe, brought comfort into the learning space. But none of them had four paws already, pressing against the school's heartbeat. with written permission from Ethan's parents and some careful planning. Charlie's visits became something more. They started small, once a week, tucked in the reading corner outside the second grade classroom. The space began to reshape around him. A cushioned mat beside the window, a wicker basket of books with a laminated sign, "Read aloud, readers welcome." Ethan went first, naturally. He knelt beside Charlie, hands steady, and began reading from an old book of fables. Voice quiet at first, then turning with the shape of the story's dips and peaks. Like a song with no notes, Charlie didn't move, only listened, like the words mattered more when said aloud in his presence. Other students followed, one by one, timid at first, a page or two, then 3. Some sat with their backs against the wall, not quite close, but close enough. One boy read his picture book upside down, too nervous to fix it. Charlie looked on with grace. A girl with a stutter read aloud for the first time in group, her syllables softened by fur and breath. Even students who rarely spoke began to volunteer. Their words weren't perfect, but they came. Hesitant, hopeful, wrapped in the trust of Charlie's gaze. Soon, the reading corner turned into something bigger. Charlie was invited to art class, his fur mimicked in colored pencil and glitter glue. A sculpture made from paper match, and Too Much Love sat lopsided on the windowsill. One child wrote a haiku about the way his eyes looked like melted wool sweaters. He was drawn into math doodles, placed gently at the feet of storybook characters during free writing sessions. And always, there was someone near him, reading. Tales and Tales became the quiet name of the center. It was printed on a small sign above the book, Nook in mismatched bubble letters. Whole lessons adjusted. When it came time to write persuasive essays, Mrs. Carter asked them to write to Charlie. Try convincing him of something, she said. One student wrote about why squirrels were friends, not foes. Another tried to explain why belly rubs should have a fixed daily schedule. Ethan wrote something different about heroism, about what it meant to be brave quietly, about showing up each day without needing to explain why. Charlie listened to them all. He never corrected, never interrupted, never grew impatient. He was a teacher you could rest against, a classmate who never laughed the wrong way. One morning, while students took turns sharing books, a fire drill sounded too soon. Sirens, bells, the bark of protocol. Children froze. Some bolted, a few shrank in place. Charlie stood up slowly, walked to the center of the carpet, and sat, one by one. The students looked to him, followed his example. They gathered themselves with breath and care, filed out together, calmly, securely. In the school's drill report that afternoon, no incident was noted, but a side comment scribbled in the margin. Charlie helped. Later that week, Mrs. Brenner added something new to the reading corner. A small jar of folded notes, some with words of encouragement, some with short poems, most with doodles of gold dogs and rainbow hearts. They called it Charlie Mail. Children took turns drawing notes from the jar after reading. A new ritual inside a growing circle of voices by the end of that month. Charlie wasn't just part of the class, he was the heart of it. Occasionally, children from other grades slipped in with excuses to deliver messages or books they didn't really need to return. They'd look around sheepishly, wave at Charlie, and hurry back out. One 6th grader, tall and awkward, left a note during lunch. I wish you had been around when I needed you, too. Charlie never replied in words, but he stayed there each day, head lowered, tails sweeping the ground with gentle rhythm. He made each child feel as best he could that someone heard them, even when the words were tangled. Every few weeks, parents came in for reading days. They'd sit in the back or hover near the door. Some blinked back tears as their child, who, just weeks ago, mumbled every sentence, now read with careful pride beside a golden rug of patience. One mother squeezed the hand of another. "That dog," she whispered, "he's changing lives." But it wasn't magic. Just presence. Just love made visible. And every story, every sentence, every broken syllable that stitched itself into confidence began with the same small thing: a dog's steady gaze, a warm, waiting listener, and the belief that sometimes all it takes to read, to speak up, to believe you matter, is knowing that someone is already there and has been all along. It was a Friday, grey and restless, the kind of day that arrived with wind in its pockets and silence in its mouth, the kind where teachers shuffled through morning tasks a touch slower and kids pulled hoods a little tighter on their walks. To school, Ethan noticed first. Not right away, not when his cereal went half uneaten, or when he tied his shoes too tightly, but when they reached the edge of Wren Street and turned the corner toward the school, something was missing. The quiet padding of paws, the soft jingle of tags. Charlie wasn't there. He turned once, hopeful, thinking maybe his furry shadow had fallen behind. But the sidewalk behind him was still, just puddles and pavement. "Maybe he got sleepy this morning," his mum said gently, tucking a curl behind his ear. She smiled, but her voice had a wrinkle in it. Ethan nodded, almost convincing himself. Almost the day unraveled slowly. Recess tasted hollow. Even reading time, usually Ethan's favorite, felt stretched too thin. When he went to the window, near the reading corner at lunch, he already knew. The patch beyond the lilacs was empty. No golden tails shifting in the grass. No soft eyes meeting his with silent understanding. Charlie was gone by mid-afternoon. Whispers filtered through the hallways between locker clatters and pencil shavings. "Where's Charlie? Did he stay home today? Is he okay?" And behind the wondering, something deeper, like the son had taken a sick day in the office. Mrs. Brenner sat on hold, with one hand cradling the phone and the other pressed against her temple. Mr. Lane's voice crackled over the line, not panicked. "But Warngate was locked. We know it, but the back corner he must have jumped, scraped his leg on the landing. We didn't notice at first," he sighed. "Nothing broken, but the vet said to keep him in for a day or two. Let the leg rest." Mrs. Brenner thanked him, promised to pass on the update, and then, as if responding to some invisible memo, the children moved. One by one, Ethan's class first folding scraps of paper into letters, sketching hearts and floppy ears with stubby crayons against cardstock. "Get well soon, Charlie," they wrote. Other classrooms joined in, unprompted. Charlie's mail jar overflowed. Messages wrapped in orange construction paper, torn notebook corners. Even a hand-folded envelope made from a tissue box. A first grader asked if they could visit him. A fourth grader left a carrot stick on the corner of the fence anyway, just in case. Mr. Sal placed a blanket over Charlie's patch by the fence. "He'll be back," he said quietly, to no one. At dismissal, students shuffled out in odd silence. Ethan walked slower than usual, his backpack heavier with more than just book weight. That night at home, Charlie laid near the hearth, one leg wrapped in soft bandage. Ethan sat next to him, reading from the book they'd started together 3 weeks earlier, his hand resting on golden fur that twitched only slightly with dreams. "Everybody missed you," he whispered. Charlie blinked once and leaned his weight deeper into Ethan's leg. Saturday passed soft and slow. Sunday draped itself across the windows like an old quilt. And then Monday arrived. The sun peeked through cloud curls. The air smelled like maple noise and new bell schedules. This time, Ethan didn't walk to school alone. Charlie walked beside him, slower, careful, but with purpose. His gait a little uneven, his tail a quiet metrome. As they neared the gates, a hush rippled toward them, not planned, not rehearsed, just something that moved heart to heart like wind through cattails. Children paused, teachers looked up, and the silence broke, not with clamor, not with noise, but with small gasps of joy, shy claps, teary-eyed grins. "He's back. Charlie, he made it." Charlie's steps didn't hurry. He didn't soak in the moment like a hero, didn't puff his chest or bark for attention. He simply walked to his patch by the lilacs and laid down a little slower, but exactly where he'd been before. Ethan crouched near the fence, rested his hand on the cool metal and whispered, "I missed you." Charlie leaned his head forward, fur brushing the base of the post dot. By the afternoon, things returned to something like normal, but softer, more noticed. Some children brought tiny tokens, a folded origami dog, a squeaky toy, a page from a coloring book finished with reverence. One class rewrote their morning poem, replacing every noun with a Charlie thing. Miss Carter walked Ethan's class out 5 minutes early, just so they could sit quietly by the fence. Even the principal came outside during lunchtime, tie flapping in the breeze, and tipped an invisible hat. "Welcome back, Professor." "Charlie," he said with a wink. That night, when Ethan's parents tucked him in, there was no talk of due dates or backpacks or long days. Only one sentence, whispered into a pillow: "Charlie came back." From that day forward, they marked the Monday he returned, not officially, just in chalk hearts, drawn near the fence line, in specially named storybooks, read in his honor, in the way kids waved at the hedge. Even if Charlie wasn't there, they called it Charlie Day. Not solemn, celebrated with extra carrots and a chance to share your favorite story aloud. Whether you were brave enough to read or just wanted to hold a book close and listen, because some days, the ones that return what was missing, deserve more than memory. They deserve joy, and Charlie, as always, gave it freely. Time, as it does, moved forward, slowly at first. Then all at once, seasons rose and slipped past, like pages in a well-loved book. The lilac bushes by the fence bloomed and browned more than once. Classrooms filled with new faces. The reading corner grew new stories, read in new voices. By the time Ethan stood at the back of the auditorium in his neatly pressed shirt and borrowed tie, Charlie no longer came to school every day. He was older now, not in the way of years alone, but in his steps, slower, deliberate, brushed with something soft around the edges. His muzzle had gone white in places, like early frost. His favorite spots on the rug were now chosen based on the reach of the sun, but he was still Charlie, still the quiet heartbeat behind the school's whispered strength, and today was a goodbye of another kind. Ethan's 5th grade graduation wasn't extravagant, folding chairs in rows, parents with camera phones, a sound system that crackled every third word. But the air held something warmer than ceremony. Near the front row, beneath Ethan's chair, sat Charlie, freshly brushed, but still with straw, clinging stubbornly to his coat. He blinked slowly as the principal read names, and every so often, when someone said Charlie, he lifted his head, ears twitching in polite recognition, like he knew he was included in something bigger than himself. When it was Ethan's turn, he rose carefully, touched the edge of his speech with fingertips that barely shook, and stepped to the podium. He didn't look over the crowd, didn't search for faces. He looked down at Charlie. "I think the biggest gift someone can give you," he began, voice softer than microphone wires usually allow, "is to show up, even when they don't have to." He paused. Charlie shifted. Charlie showed up for me when I didn't know how to ask anyone to. He never expected words from me, never judged them when they came out wrong. He just ... stayed. Across the gathering, no one moved. Not quite. My first friend at this school wasn't from my class. He didn't do spelling tests. He didn't sit in circle time, but he was always there at recess, waiting, listening. And because of that, I started to find my way here. Started to find my voice. Ethan smiled, small and sure. And that's the thing about dogs, I guess. They don't worry about loudness or right words. They just wait until you're ready. And sometimes that's everything. A pause. Then, Charlie's older now. He's got a limp, and he likes naps that are longer than my homework. But he still listens. He still knows when someone needs to be reminded they matter. Eyes shimmered across the audience. Behind the principal stood a small table. Upon it, a red collar with a tag that gleamed like brass kissed by sunrise. The counselor stepped forward, cleared her throat gently. "This isn't on any official school list," she said, smiling at Charlie, "but today we'd like to honor someone who's been more than just a visitor." She bent, fastened the collar gently around Charlie's neck, fingers brushing his golden fur with reverence. The tag read, "Best Classmate," and the applause that followed wasn't thunderous or clamorous, it was bright. The kind that lives in memory, the kind that children remember when they're older and trying to remember exactly when they learned what kindness looked like in the years that followed. Charlie visited less frequently, his steps too slow for busy mornings. But twice a year he returned for Charlie Day and the annual reading festival. The reading corner still bore his name. The notes jar still collected poems and letters. Even students who had never met him heard the stories, drew pictures, left treats beneath the hedge, just in case. Time, eventually, came for Charlie too, softly, as befitting a life so steeped in gentleness. One morning, not long after Ethan started middle school, Charlie passed. There was no thunder, no ache in the sky, just the quiet ending of a chapter whose pages had forever left their mark. The school mourned, but gently, not loudly, that wouldn't have suited him. Instead, they planted a tree, a maple, just beyond the southern fence, where the lilac bushes swayed, a bench beneath it, carved with careful hands, for Charlie never missed recess. And every so often, when the wind turns just right, when lunchboxes clatter open and books crack apart at the spine, some say you can still hear a tail swish softly through the grass. Not a goodbye, just a presence, still, always. It was the kind of morning that didn't ask for anything. Soft light resting on the rooftops, breeze murmuring low through the whispering grass behind the schoolyard. The tree behind the southern fence, the one with wide branches and maple red. Leaves cast a gentle shadow over the bench beneath it. The bench was empty at first, and then a young man walked up the gravel path. He'd grown, of course, taller by a head, shoulders a bit squared off, voice no longer trembling around its edges. but his eyes were still Ethan's, steady, thoughtful, flickering with the same quiet motion of someone who listens more than he speaks. He held a leash in one hand, and at the other end of it bounced a golden retriever pup, clumsy with newness. Ears just a shade too big for his head. The dog paused every few feet to sniff a rock, to blink up at Ethan, to lean his whole body into a breeze like it might carry him somewhere better. They reached the bench. Ethan sat. The puppy tried sitting, too, but excitement made his tail a blur and each paw an uncertain promise. He flopped instead, his fluffy belly pressed to the cool earth, his chest rising and falling in sync with the weightless hush of morning. Ethan looked down at him, smiling. "You're a lot like him already." The wind jostled the leaves above. Just softly, the collar around the pup's neck gleamed dull gold in the light. The name tag read Whisper behind the school windows. Children were beginning to settle, their chatter rising in the playful rhythm Ethan remembered so well. A teacher stepped out, crossing the yard with measured steps and a smile that hadn't changed in years. Miss Carter, though her hair had turned a little silver at the sides. She stopped when she saw him. "Back again," she said, not as a question. Ethan stood, a little bashful. "Thought I'd visit, see if the bench still remembers." Miss Carter's eyes drifted to Whisper, who was now chewing determinedly on the end of a fallen leaf. "And who's this?" He glanced down with affection. "This is Whisper, just a few months old, has no idea how much world is ahead of him." She crouched slightly, offering her hand. Whisper licked it with great importance before trying to climb into her lap. "Seems like someone's ready to make friends." Ethan nodded. "I guess some traditions are worth passing on." Miss Carter touched the back of the bench gently, fingers brushing over the carved letters, now weathered but still clear. "He'd like that," she said. "I think so too." They sat for a while, saying little, the kind of silence that settles around familiar company, needing no explanation. Inside the building, the day spun into motion, chairs scraped, laughter circled, papers rustled with the telltale zest of children discovering that stories could take them places they hadn't known how to reach. From the classroom next to the yard, someone opened a window. A child's voice filtered through, reading aloud. Not loud, not perfect, just present. Whisper perked up, ears tilted, one paw lifting slightly like he was considering something long and serious. Ethan watched him, the corners of his mouth tipping. "Up. Sounds familiar, doesn't it?" Whisper didn't answer in any human way, but he turned toward the sound. Ethan rose from the bench. He gave Miss Carter a quiet wave. She returned it, hand barely lifting from her coat pocket, eyes soft. As he walked away down the path, Whispered trotting beside him. The wind carried a swirl of crayon song laughter through the air, bits of names, of stories, of dreams spoken freely, and from the branch above the bench, a single red leaf dropped. It twirled once, twice, and landed gently on the wood below, right at the foot of the words that had come to mean so much. For Lua never missed recess, and somewhere inside the rhythm of that day, layered between stories read aloud and footsteps rushing toward lunch, something familiar lingered, not loud, not obvious, just there. The feeling of being seen by a pair of cinnamon eyes, the echo of a tail sweeping softly against the fence, the promise that the loving kind don't need appointments or titles to make the world a softer place. Sometimes they just wait by the door, by the tree, by the heart that needs them. And if you're very lucky, they stay.